Let's get more now. Joining us in our studio, our national reporter, Paul Hawkins. Paul, we should reflect that this meeting in the Lords, of course, not in the Commons, was scheduled before this all blew up, but clearly this is going to be top of the agenda for, the Director-General and the acting chairman of the BBC.
Yeah, Ellen Closs-Stevens and the Director of Policy, Claire Sumner, as well. Yeah, top of their list will be questions for Tim Davie about the way the BBC have handled this situation and how they've handled the complaints process. So key questions would be, why did it take almost 7 weeks for the Director-General and the presenter to learn about the complaint? Why did the broadcaster allow the presenter to remain on air despite serious allegations about him? The BBC tried to contact the parents making the complaint with an email and a phone call. Was that thorough enough? So that will be we'll probably hear that. Could more have been done? We might get an update on the mental health of Huw Edwards, on how his family are doing, his wife. Maybe the Director-General might have spoken to them, etc. You're probably going to hear the answer a lot. There is an ongoing investigation, and I couldn't comment until.
Yeah. And as you were pointing out, a duty of care, of course, as an employer as well. As you know, even though this is a public corporation, the BBC's answerable in a way to Parliament. Of course, they still have this individual duty of care to their employees. Yeah, it has a duty of care to us as licence fee payers, but it also has a duty of care as an employer to Huw Edwards, and also a responsibility towards members of staff, as there are allegations that he sent inappropriate messages to them as well. So it's got to balance this very carefully. But as I keep saying, you're going to hear the defence, or at least a lot of the time, you're going to hear this afternoon that there's an ongoing investigation, so I couldn't possibly comment until that investigation has run its course. What we may hear is an update on the investigation itself. How far along the line is it? Is it likely to come to a conclusion soon? Have the Sun been cooperating with the investigation? Because the Sun have always said, we have evidence to back up these allegations made by the family of the young person who made the initial, who was at the centre of the first story, but they've never published that evidence. Have they passed it to the BBC? How cooperative have they been with the BBC, as they claim they would be? So we may get some details there.
And separately, is the funding of the BBC licence fee due to come up as well? Because it looks like there's going to be a review into all that in the autumn. Yeah,
if they have time for that. I mean, these committee hearings have a pretty tight schedule, so possibly if there is room at the end, they may also talk about the licence fee. It's always up for debate. And, of course, many supporters of the BBC are saying that the reason this was published by News UK in the first place was because they want to see the BBC come under fire. They want to see its funding changed.
Yeah, interesting that the Prime Minister's official spokesman, of course, we had a cabinet meeting today, has reflected on this. Downing Street indicating the option of a BBC financed by advertising could be considered as part of a review of the corporation's funding. I mean, this is something that happens all the time. But clearly for Tim Davie and the chair, this is a sensitive time when all eyes are on them.
Yeah, it is, yeah. And as you say, you do hear this all the time about, there could be a subscription fee. We might look into it. All options are on the table. You hear that all the time. But he will be aware that there are questions here about not just about the processes at the BBC, but also about his leadership, and that, while that's being scrutinised and if the level of criticism increases, then the level of pressure does so on the BBC, and whether it should be funded, continue to be funded in the way that it is.